Today on the worldview, Israel, Palestine, Munich, Entebbe. What are the commonalities here? We'll talk about that on this episode of the worldview. So the Israeli situation with Hamas is in on all the media, right? Because the media likes this. The media loves this. The media loves conflict. The media goes in there and they put their people in there and they report on streaming. They do whatever they need to do because that is what is important, to report. If it bleeds, it leads. Let me tell you something. There are things happening in the world that are other than Israel and Hamas, but yet where are they being covered? The BBC, the BBC covers that stuff. France 24 covers that stuff. DW covers that stuff. But let me tell you something. The media here in the US, nope. I mean, they don't cover it because they would rather have their people in harm's way in the middle of this very, very, very deadly confrontation between Gaza and Israel. And that's what's happening. So let's find out, why is it so emotional that situation's happening over there? And the first thing I love to talk about is, remember, we talked about Palestine, talked about Israel. So the first thing I want to talk about is the borders, right? So what happened, and with Palestine, Israel, and the rest of those areas, and why is that the way it is? Well, interestingly enough, and this is interesting, as Palestine was a country. Palestine what actually existed. Palestine here. Now, this is from the BBC. Excellent maps here. And this is what happened after British Mandate. Now, remember, this was kind of like after the World Wars, right? So this is what we're talking about. So Britain had this area in here. Syria, French Mandate; Iraq, British Mandate; Jordan, Saudi Arabia from 1925. So there we have Transjordan here, which would later become Jordan, and this area here, which was called Palestine. Well, what happened was after World War II. So after World War One, Ottoman Empire had it, and then World War One had it, and then World War One. After World War One, Britain basically took it over, and so the terms of the mandate entrusted Britain with establishing in Palestine a national home for the Jewish people, so long as doing so did not prejudice the civil and religious rights of non-Jewish communities there. So this was UN partition plan for Palestine, and this was going to happen, right? So then Arab nationalism came up, but you can see here's Arab state here, Jewish state here, and Jerusalem was an international city under an international area. It was not owned by either Palestine or Israel. And there's a couple reasons for that, but the main thing is a lot of religions. There's a lot of religions in Jerusalem, including a major, Christian religion, of course, and then the Jewish religion has many artifacts and many symbols that are important to them, and as well as Muslims who have very important religious symbols and mosques and areas of religious centerpieces there also. So Jerusalem is a big deal. So that's what happened there. Then 1949, right? So 1949, post-World War II, Jordanian occupied this area called the West Bank. This is the Jordan River right here. So this is the West Bank of the Jordan River, right? Makes sense. Then you have Egypt occupied Gaza, and the armistice lines are here. So that's what's going on the armistice lines in this area, right? Again, Palestine, you know, Palestine, Israel cohabitated, right? That's what they did. Jewish leadership in Palestine, the state of Israel, on 14 May 1948. The moment the British basically left, and this is actually well documented in the book um, Exodus. I think it's Leon Uris, I think, who wrote it. If I'm mistaken on that, I'm sure that people let me know. So that's happened with that. All of a sudden, the Arabs, they're not going to have any of that. So they end up going to war in 1949, and they also go to war in 1967. And all of a sudden, Israel got all these, the Golan Heights, West Bank, Gaza. They got all that as a result of the 1967 war. They basically beat a joint Arab army made up of Syria, Egypt, a lot of other countries that just wanted Israel gone. So that's what happened there. Then 1982 peace treaty came up, and now you had land occupied by Israel, right? But you had armistice lines here. So they're still occupied by Israel, but they had West Bank here, Gaza here, Golan Heights here. So then all of a sudden, Jordan became the second Arab state to recognize Israel. So there's your first one, which was Egypt. Remember, Arafat, he's the no, not Arafat. I'm sorry. There was Egyptian president before Mubarak, and in fact, Mubarak was the vice president underneath this individual, and they made a peace treaty with Israel, and later on, that Egyptian leader was assassinated. So that wasn't cool, but basically they did that, and that was under Jimmy Carter, believe it or not. So that's what happened in that, and then all of a sudden, then they had. Then they were able to do this. This is all the. This is the map. Very good map, by the way. They present this on BBC all the time. That shows a crossing for Gaza. So here we have this area of Gaza. There's a line right here that splits kind of north and south Gaza. They want everybody here to move here, and the reason is because Israel wants to basically go into Gaza, invade, whatever you want to call it, and clear up these area from Hamas, and be able to give themselves the ability to have a buffer between this area and Israel. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works. But you can see, that's going on. And then it goes on to the Israeli border fence with Gaza and all these. I mean, it's really, really good area. So that's Palestine. So Palestine, literally, Israel was part of Palestine. Palestine was part of Israel. They were supposed to be joint in nature, but it just really didn't turn out that way. So then this, what is Palestine? So let's talk about history. History.com, very, very good talk about Palestine. So this is what they have here. And then they talk about Palestine. It's funny because I think the Philistines, Philistia, which was the Greek word, ancient Greek writers, I'm wondering if Philistine was actually Palestine. It was actually the Philistines were against Israel, against the Jewish army, that type of thing. That would be interesting, actually, to see if that is the etymology of that Philistia area. So it talks about all the other different things that go along in there: Palestine, early roots, all these different things, the partition of Palestine. So this is what, two sections: independent Jewish state, independent Arab state. So that's what they wanted to do, and that's what they remember. That partitioning aspect is what they wanted to do. And then in 48. Then Israel became a state. And it's interesting because a lot of things happened in 48 under Truman. A lot of things. One is he was elected for the first time as an elected president for the United States. That was number one, beat Dewey. But after all that, the Marshall Plan, the Reconstruction, all that stuff, Reconstruction of Europe, all that stuff was done post-World War II, and UN was formed, all that, 1948, big year for all this stuff happening. And then the PLO. So why are we talking about the PLO? Establishing a Palestinian Arab state in land previously administered under British mandate. So the PLO started in 1964. A lot of things happened in the 1960s, early to mid 1960s. A lot of groups were born. A lot of terrorist groups, rebellion group, whatever you want to call them. They were kind of born in that area. It's interesting because BBC had an entire article on why they did not call Hamas terrorists, and I thought it was a really, really good article. If you want to look that up, it's BBC. Why doesn't BBC call Hamas terrorists? And the reason is because they state in that article that they report the news. They don't try to establish what people are. They let the news and the journalism go, have, and people can decide for themselves. I love that. People can decide for themselves. That's wow, what a concept, huh? Other than the media that shoves it at you here in the United States. No, the BBC says, we'll let you decide. We're going to, it's the old "we'll report, you decide" thing, but it's much better than the news media that actually coined that term. So they talk about the different wars, 6-Day War, all these things happening in 6-Day War, basically 67, right? So that's what happened there. And then 1987, this is really interesting in that area, the Oslo Peace Accords, all these areas. So it tried to make it, how between Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat, right, the Palestinian leader at that time. They actually shook hands, which was really, really interesting. So that's what happened there, and this is what happens there. See, look. So, I mean, so this is a very good article. I want you to make sure that you take a look at it, because Hamas was formed in 2006, right? I mean, it was formed before then, but they actually won the Palestinian legislative elections, which was talking about Fatah was Yasser Arafat, if I'm not mistaken. So all these, I mean, it's so interesting how all this comes up, but I think that people just do not understand the very, very complex nature of what all this does, right? Of what all it happens. Well, let's kick forward to 1972. So this is where Munich comes into play. In 1972, there was an Olympics in Munich. There was a lot of things happened in that Olympics. You want to take a look at 1972 Olympics. A lot of things happened there. It was kind of crazy. I mean, the U.S. lost to the Soviets in basketball, but yet there was a problem with timekeeping. Somebody tried to fake themselves as a marathon winner, and the U.S. was supposed to be the winner, and they were the winner, but basically this person just kind of ran on the track and just faked everyone out. I mean, there was all kind of problems that happened in that 1972 thing, but the major one was called the Munich Massacre, where 8 terrorists, Black September, an extremist faction of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, so Black September, and what they call the Baader-Meinhof gang, which were called the Red Faction also, but basically they came in. Or no, not in this one. I'm sorry, that's the next one. This is the one I'm going to talk about in Entebbe. But the Black September came in and they took hostages, and basically they killed all the hostages. So they called the Munich Massacre. So, and just so happened that all the hostages were part of the Israeli Olympic team. So they took them and they killed them. So so that happened then in 1972. Then in 1976, in July of 76, there was what they call Entebbe. The 90 minutes over Entebbe, 90 minutes at Entebbe. Entebbe is part of Uganda. And Uganda was run at that time by a vicious dictator by the name of Idi Amin Dada. And Idi Amin Dada wasn't just anti-Semitic. Well, first of all, he had a lot of issues health-wise, mental health-wise, and everything else. But he was just a madman. I mean, literally, he was a madman. He was just not just an autocratic ruler, but he was a dictator and killed people for fun. I mean, the guy, he was just not a very nice person, to put it bluntly. So Uganda, and this is Uganda. Uganda today is actually they're trying very hard to be a good African country. So this is Uganda here, and Kampala is the capital of Uganda, and this is Entebbe, right here. And Entebbe was the site, the focal point for an absolute major hostage rescue by the Israelis. What happened was that there were two sets of terrorists. The terrorists were, and I want to make sure that we do this right. Um, Basically, they were hijacked and routed from Israel to France. Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine members and the Red Army faction actually called the Baader-Meinhof Gang, which was a really, really big deal in the 1970s. Baader-Meinhof Gang, Red Brigade, Brigata Rossa, there were major terrorist factions in Europe at that time, and the Red Army faction was one of them. They joined up with the PFLP, not PLO, but PFLP, and they hijacked this aircraft and took everyone to Entebbe, Uganda. Now, and then they were joined by the terrorists. Israel said, hey, enough of this. The hijackers freed the passengers that did not have any Jewish background or did not have any association with Israel, and kept 53 um, or they released those at 258 and demanded 53 militants imprisoned in Israel, Kenya, West Germany, and elsewhere. Right. So July 3rd, the Israelis dispatched four C-130 cargo planes, which fooled. I mean, very, very good plan. They fooled the air traffic controllers. They came in under darkness. They were able uh, to destroy the fighters, Ugandan fighters. They were able to get all the hostages out. Three of them were killed during the operation, or I think one had a heart attack. And Israelis lost one soldier. And it's funny because they don't name that soldier. The current prime minister is Benjamin Netanyahu, and his brother was the one soldier that was lost during that hostage rescue. So I think that's very, very important. I mean, you lose a brother to a hostage rescue, and it will. I mean, you lose a brother anyways, but you lose a brother under those circumstances. I'm sure that lays very, very heavily within you. So that's where you have Entebbe and Munich and Palestine and Israel, all part of that deal. Now, are other things happening in the world? Yes, there are other things happening in the world. And I realize that this is now the number one thing because we are balloon squeezing. We have this little pop-up thing, so we got to push that down. And every media outlet in the world is flying into Israel and attempting to put on helmets and flak vests and make themselves part of the embedded combat team, whatever you want to call it, to try to go in there because that's a big deal. I mean, it means a possible Pulitzer Prize for them and the reporting and all the good things and more celebrity and all the other things that go along with that. Now, am I being cynical? You bet I'm being cynical because there may be this many journalists out there that are actually doing this because they are trying to help people. I doubt very much if these journalists are there trying to help people. I think they're trying to gain as much momentum from this situation as possible, and it's just a shame that they have to do so with this type of really, really bad conflict. So that's what's happening there. But are other things happening? Yes, they are. Let's talk about Sudan. 5,000 people have been killed as a result between the Sudanese armed forces and a military group called Rapid Support Forces. I mean, and that come out of the Tigray region, right? Or not Tigray, that's Ethiopia. So basically what happened is South Sudan busted away from Sudan as a result of armed conflict. And now the Sudanese army is having problems with another internal domestic dispute. And it's, Khartoum is just a mess. Khartoum is the capital of Sudan, and this place is a mess. It's just, and 5,000 people, 5 million people are being forced from their homes. So let's take a look at this. I mean, this is ongoing right now in Sudan. That was covered maybe 2 days, 3 days, maybe a whole week in international news. I don't know if it was covered at all in the United States. I think maybe it was passing in the United States, the type of thing. So that's really a shame. Yeah, heaven forbid that we should cover other situations that are happening that are costing lives, because basically it just doesn't have the same degree of coverage that the Israel Hamas situation has. And I just heard this morning from I think it was Al Jazeera News, I think, that had an individual on that was talking about how the U.S. media is literally fueling the fight between Israel and the Gaza and the Gaza Strip, because that, they are so biased in their reporting. This is me talking. This is an individual that was on Al Jazeera News. So I just thought that was very interesting how this situation is just, it's drumming up and drumming up and drumming up and drumming up. And I'll tell you what I told individuals when I was on the news about the invasion of Ukraine. You don't put a bunch of soldiers up against a border if you're not going to invade. You just don't do that. You don't just sit them there. You have them there for a reason. So basically what's going to happen is that Israelis are going in. They are going to go into Gaza. And they're going in with one objective, and that is to clear out Hamas. How they're going to tell which ones are Hamas and which ones are Palestinians that are trying to settle there, I don't know how they're going to do that. Maybe they have intelligence on that. I don't know. So but this is what's happening. Sudan. What about Poland? You have the Poland elections. Thank God that basically the hard right wing did not gain enough seats. It did not gain a majority of seats in parliament, but they still have 200 seats in parliament. The nationalists, the heavy nationalists. So they wanted to pull away from the EU. They wanted they want to have more say in what's going on in their country. That's a tough one. So that happened. So there are things that are happening every single. France had stabbings. They just upped their security level because they had all kind of stabbings. I mean, what are they going to? I don't know what they're going to do about that. I don't know whether they're going to make knives illegal. I don't know what they're going to. I don't know how they're going to make that work, right? Because with guns it's one thing. With knives it's a whole other deal, right? Because you need kitchen knives, those types of things. So all these areas are going to be part of the news once this situation in Gaza calms down, hopefully within the next 1 or 2 weeks. But in the meantime, this is their bread and butter. This is the media's bread and butter. This is what they want. This is what they want, is they want conflict because they can report on that conflict. And if one person in the media says, no, we really don't want conflict. We want peace. Really, because it's really hard reporting peace. It's really hard getting people to listen to peace stories. It's really easy to get people to listen to explosions and people in chaos. We have this weird kind of, we're drawn to that. So it's very, very sad. And on that note, I'm going to end it here and say thank you so much for listening. And sorry about I apologize about the cynical aspect on this whole thing, but the more that I see of the U.S. media, the less I like of it. That's why I don't quote any of the U.S. media. I mean, because I quote BBC, I quote Al Jazeera. I even go to history.com because I like that a lot better than I like any of the things that are coming out of the news organizations at this point in time, because it's all about celebrity, folks. It's all about celebrity. I'm not one, so I don't have to worry about that. Until next time, this is Chris Greco saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Worldview.